Hey guys, it's Jasmine and welcome back to my channel. Today's card is going to be a really light and airy look to it. It's going to be a faith-based sentiment on the card. So we're going to get started with a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. I use the Strathmore brand. And I've run that through my Big Shot using an MFT Wonky Stitches die. And then I'm going to use this cloud stencil from Inky Antics and some Moonstone ink by Lawn Fawn. And this is a really pale blue. So you almost can't see it on the cardstock until I remove the stencil. And I'm just going to work my way up the card and just add in clouds. And you want to keep an eye on where you want to vary the angles of the stencil, but you also want to keep an eye on where the lines of the stencil intersect. So you don't want to have them cross each other or it looks kind of funny. So if you wanted more of a night sky look, you could do this with darker inks and get a really high contrast look to this. But I wanted this to be kind of pale, airy, and soft. So I'm going with my stamp set. I'm using the Concord 9th Faith and Love stamp set and some Versamark ink, so we're going to do some heat embossing. And I do recommend doing your stenciling before you do the heat embossing, just because we're using a glitter powder and it's going to kind of remove the glitter as you buff over it. I kind of had to redo this card because that's what ended up happening. So just word of the wise, do your stenciling first, unless you're going to use a solid embossing powder. If you're using one that's solid or has a pearl finish, something like that, it doesn't matter. But if you're using a glitter one, it can kind of make it too rough and bumpy and end up removing the glitter. And a second consideration that I learned the hard way in making this card is you want to let your ink on the background, the stenciling, really dry. And I didn't let it dry long enough, so I ended up with it sticking a lot, as you can see there. Wasn't too big of a deal. I could just kind of flick it with my fingernail and use a brush to kind of get some of the extra stray bits off, but just to avoid the extra hassle, just let it dry first. Or you could take your heat tool and speed it up with that. I prefer not to do that because it can warp the cardstock. It did work anyway, it just took a little bit more tedious cleaning. And this is just a plain old fine tip paintbrush. I've had it for years, as you can see. Half of the paint on the barrel is peeled off. So now we're going to heat emboss. Whenever you're heat embossing, you want to let your gun warm up for at least 30 seconds. And what that does is you have more heat for less time, which leads to less warping of your cardstock. So I have this at an angle so that the camera can kind of catch how it changes, and it can be hard to see when your embossing powder is melted. And glitter is actually helpful in that because it turns a little bit so you can see it shift, and it makes it helpful to kind of know when you can stop heating it. And this embossing powder is called Golden Flame by Wow. So I'm going to go in and use a little bit of a darker ink on just the edges. So I'm using Hero Art Soft Sky for the edge. I wanted to keep this nice and soft, like I said, so I didn't go anything with too dark. So I've just got a turquoise card base, top folding card base, and I've used some score tape around the edges and then some tape runner. I don't find tape runners to be permanent. I know they say they are, but in my experience, they're really not. They do fall apart over time, and you can get them up pretty easily. So what I do is I use a little bit of tape runner in the middle of the card and then score tape on my edges and just lift up the release paper, but not take it off. So I use the tape runner in the middle to kind of anchor it, and then that allows me to remove the score tape backing paper without it shifting. So I still get it straight. So now we're going to move on to our sequence, our final finishing touch. I'm using Little Things Nautical Sparkle and Pretty Pink Posh 4 millimeter sparkling clear. And I'm using some Ranger matte medium. You can use any matte medium. I like the Prima brand as well to attach those. And I like the matte medium because when it's wet, it isn't sticky. But when it dries, it is not shiny. So if you get it kind of squished out anywhere you don't want it, or anything else, you get it somewhere you don't want it, it doesn't dry to where it shows. It dries matte, so it doesn't reflect light. So you don't see it on the card. And that's why I like it. And it's really nice and sturdy once it is dry. So these don't fall off later. Whereas using something like glossy accents or a lot of glues, just general glue, they can be shiny and show up where you don't want them. So that's just my choice. You can use whatever you want. So there's the finished card. Nice and simple. Hope you liked it. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps my channel out, and I appreciate it so much. So thanks, guys. Have a great day, and we will catch you next time.